Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, guys, I'm going to read some parts of this manual. Investigation of child physical abuse and neglect, child sexual abuse and exploitation. This is from the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Trainings. This is the LAPD's book in which they would refer to guide them in how to investigate child abuse. So it's probably going to be a little bit dry reading, but I feel it's really important. I tried to get my Kindle to bring this document up, and I can't do it on my phone. So I'm going to be reading from my tablet, so you guys can't really follow along. Maybe eventually I'll figure it all out. But for now, that's just going to have to do. Clearly, I couldn't read the Kindle document on my phone. Obviously not. Introduction. It is a sad commentary that children can be victims of crimes, not only by strangers, but most prevalently by the very people to whom they are entrusted. Nationally, 92% of the child victims are maltreated by one or both parents. In 2018, more than 15% of children were poly-victimized, suffered two or more forms of abuse. In the same year, the substantiated abuse and neglect rates in California was 7.5 per every 1,000 children. 1 of 3 girls and 1 in 7 boys are sexually assaulted, defined as RAPE, statutory rape, rape in concert, incest, sodomy, oral COPU, lewd or lascivious acts upon a child, blank penetration, or child molestation. Per 11165.1 PC. By the time they reach 18, nearly half of California children with substantiated cases of maltreatment are ages 5 and younger, and abusive head trauma is the leading cause of physical child abuse deaths in the U.S. I'm just wondering, this is not counting all the children in the foster homes and or the teen homes and all of those, what do they call that, where the orphans go? I don't know if they have those anymore, but the homes where they send children that are not wanted until they get adopted, whatever those are called. Child abuse cases can be labor-intensive. They are notoriously difficult and complicated to investigate, prove, and prosecute. Most cases seemingly start with only the child statement, or injuries on the child for which the account given by the care provider is not consistent with the medical findings. Evidence may be discoverable in physical abuse cases, but notably absent in most child sexual abuse cases. I just want to add that, and I'm not an expert, but if you take a child to a doctor for an examination, if the doctor is legitimate and honest, you can find out if the child's being sexually molested. You can. Boy or girl. Children who are old enough to seek help do not because they are too frightened or confused to tell anyone. And if they do tell, the toll on the children and the families can be heavy. The fear of disclosure will most likely mean the destruction of the family and the incarceration of the loved offender. Loved offender? In some cases, children are reportedly discovered deceased with no explanation and no obvious cause of the death. Proving an allegation of child abuse relies heavily on the children themselves, followed by suspect identification and environmental factors. With that burden in mind, it is incumbent upon law enforcement. It is incumbent upon law enforcement to thoroughly investigate any allegation by considering the child's environment and a potential perpetrator's access to an opportunity to be with the child. Officers, I would venture to say, in Scientology, there are a lot of opportunities for perpetrators to get to the children and have access to the children. Just like Wally, what was his name? Wally Hanks or Wally Banks or Hanks, yes. All you have to do is look him up on the internet. It's amazing. It's amazing what you can find on Google, officers. These investigations are best conducted with a multidisciplinary approach. Law enforcement is not alone with limited tools, but rather supported by medical professionals, social services, community care licensing, child advocacy centers, prosecutors, and fellow law enforcement investigators. The criminal justice system relies on the members of the multidisciplinary team to discover the necessary elements that will prove the innocence. Oh, listen to that. Prove the innocence of the falsely accused and the guilt of the offender. It is law enforcement's responsibility to communicate with the other disciplines and to gather and document the findings and present them to the prosecutor. These guidelines incorporate legal mandates as they pertain to law enforcement personnel. Law enforcement has a legal and moral obligation to thoroughly investigate reports of suspected child abuse and to determine whether a crime has been committed. Investigations must be carried out in a professional and sensitive manner to protect the welfare and the rights of the potential victim and the suspected offender. Officers must realize that the work completed during the initial phases of the investigation may have a tremendous impact on the welfare of the child, as well as the successful prosecution of the accused. All officers involved with child abuse cases should have adequate training in child abuse investigative techniques, including proper methods for interviewing victims, witnesses, and suspects. Officers should be sensitive to the dynamics, like in Scientology, of the child abuse investigations, as well as possible repercussions. These guidelines provide a basis for law enforcement agencies to evaluate their policies and procedures. This document presents the information needed to conduct a child abuse investigation in such a way that law enforcement professionals can follow a step-by-step process. The guidelines are general and designed to provide order and continuity to the investigations. The guidelines are divided into chapters, and whenever possible, the sequence of which follows the normal progression of events from the receipt of the initial report to the completion of the case summary for the prosecuting attorney. More detailed investigative information is available in post-certified child abuse investigation courses. Just going to read the mission statement. This is, by the way, you guys, I'm going to put the link in the description. You can download this onto your computer, your tablet, or your phone. in case you're out there by the Blue Building or Hemet, California, or Clearwater, Florida. Well, Florida won't work. But anyways, this is for California. But you could probably pull up this manual, regardless, the correct manual for the location that you're at, just to remind the officers what investigating child abuse steps they need to take in case they don't know how to do it or something. Okay, I'm trying to find the mission statement here. Mission statement. Oh, you guys, you know what? All of the child advocates / protesters in front of the Blue Building and some of the Scientology buildings, you guys should all have this in your pocket, just to remind the officers what the mission statement is for child abuse investigation. Just in case they don't know, they might need a reminder. Mission statement. The mission of the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, POST, is to continually enhance the professionalism of California law enforcement in serving its communities. Serving its communities. And by the way, there is a list of all the post commissioners that are in charge of child abuse investigations, people that are directly either working with child abuse investigations and or in charge of them. There's a child abuse investigation guidelines review committee. Good to look into that. Let's ask them and find out what they're going to do about the children abused in Scientology. Okay, hold on. I want to see, I'm looking at the index, the table of contents. I want to see, okay, I'm going to read priorities and objectives, which is guideline number 1 and guideline number 2. Wait, no, there's a few I'm going to read that afterwards. I want to read guidelines for investigators. So that's going to be page 19. Guidelines for investigators. These guidelines are for law enforcement use when responding to and investigating child abuse and sexual assault cases. Responses will vary depending upon individual agencies and jurisdictions. Goals. This is important because I really think a lot of the LAPD need a reminder of what the goals are when it comes to investigating child abuse, physical abuse, and or sexual assaults of children. It's very important. The goals established in preparing these guidelines are as follows. Improve the law enforcement response to reports of physical abuse, child neglect, child sexual abuse, and child exploitation. I would venture to say Scientology checks all of those boxes. And it's not hidden in plain sight anymore. It's out in the open. Enhance the investigation and prosecution of these complex and sensitive cases. Wait, I'm going to read that again just in case people they didn't get it. Enhance the investigation and prosecution of these complex and sensitive cases. Familiarize law enforcement personnel with all pertinent laws and resources associated with child abuse crimes, including local, state, and federal agencies. Provide officers with information on how to assist, interact with, and educate victims and their families about the criminal justice process. Well, then maybe they could just drop off some brochures inside those Scientology buildings and the hotels as well. Also Clearwater, but Clearwater would have to hand out their their information, just so that the parents, not the abusing parents, because clearly they're going to hide it, but just so the children know that there's some kind of respite for them. There's someone that will help them when they're being sexually assaulted, physically abused, neglected, as well as exploited. So those children know somebody does care about them and they're going to help them. Provide officers with information on how to assist, interact with, and educate victims and their families about the criminal justice process. Describe common misconceptions and realities about child physical abuse, child neglect, child sexual abuse, and child exploitation. And also, I want to add to that, any officer that is participating in those types of behaviors in his own home or her home must be ruled out from any of these investigations. They can't investigate abuse when they're abusing their own children. Provide an understanding of the benefits of the Child Abuse Response Team, CART, approach. Oh, that's good to look into, CART approach, even if it is not formalized by the officer's jurisdiction. Provide information on how to conduct unbiased. Oh, LAPD would just need to. In fact, to get an unbiased LAPD, you'd probably have to either move them all out to a different location and start fresh. Because they're all in Scientology. And that's not unbiased police work, which is against regulation. Provide information on how to conduct unbiased and effective forensic interviews with victims, witnesses, and suspects in order to determine the facts and to protect the rights of all parties. Well, you wouldn't protect the offenders part as a party. You don't protect perpetrators and offenders that are hurting children. Safeguard the community. Okay, hold on, guys. I want to just do a little bit of perusing and see what I'm going to read next here. Okay, Guideline 1, Priorities and Objectives. I'm going to go check that out. That's on page 23. Chapter 1, General Child Abuse Investigative Procedures. Guideline 1, Priorities and Objectives. A, the primary objective of the investigation is the protection of the child. Wow, you're not really... LAPD, did you hear that? So every time you go out and you're standing guard in the Scientology parking lots, you are actually complicit and participating in child abuse on a massive scale because you are not protecting the children inside of those buildings or in those hotels. And the children should be the priority, in case you guys didn't know that. Not your bank account, the children. B, law enforcement personnel have the responsibility to conduct an objective, thorough, and unbiased investigation. You guys are always talking about unbiased. That means you need to stop taking payments and being buddy-buddy with Scientology because they're abusing children right now. People in Scientology are abusing. Not everyone, but there's enough of it going on. Because, just so you know, children are not adults in small bodies. That shit doesn't work. C, law enforcement investigators should protect the legal rights of all involved parties to include 1, victim, 2, suspects, 3, all witnesses. You might have to protect the safety of the offender, the suspect. I would say protect the safety of the suspect, because you know. D, law enforcement investigators should be aware that multiple jurisdictions may be involved in the investigation of a child abuse case, These jurisdictions may include 1. Criminal court. Yeah, because pedophilia is against the law. I know they're trying to make some weird new laws in California that 13 and above can do certain acts with adults, but that doesn't fly. No, that's not going to work. So we're going to have to really protect them because adults need to be with adults, not children. Just, A, law enforcement. B, district attorney. I would be curious to see what kind of convictions the district attorney has done toward past pedophilia cases. Because you all know what's going on in California, right? 2, juvenile court. A, child protective services. Yeah, they need to be informed. I don't know how many good ones are there, but how many are paid off, but we can try. B, county council. 3, family court. A, family members, divorce, custody issues. Administrative actions. A, community care licensing. California Department of Social Services. State licensing agencies, medical board, teacher, credentialing, etc. 5, federal agencies. I really feel that at this point, the federal agencies should be called in for all the systemic child abuse at Scientology because they're abusing children at a systemic level. So maybe you guys should start working with the feds right now. That would be good because we got to get these children out. It's important. A, federal law enforcement, FBI, postal inspectors, Secret Service, ICE, U.S. Attorney's Office, and federal court. I know this is a little bit dry, but it's important information. Guideline 2, role of law enforcement. It is the role of law enforcement, detective, investigator, officer to investigate and determine whether a crime has been committed. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Yes, child testimony is very important, but there are a lot of doctors, if you take these children, I know they've already been traumatized enough, but there's very many ways you can get medical documentation. A lot of ways. Because, not to be too graphic, but I'm just going to say in general terms, a very small child is not able to handle the kinds of perversions that go on with these sick adults. Their little bodies can't handle it. So there's always going to be certain types of marks and markers on their bodies to prove that, in fact, they are being abused. The investigation includes, but is not limited to, A, ensuring that all interviews are completed, including victims, witnesses, suspects, and other collateral people involved. B, conducting a thorough crime scene investigation. That's important. C, that also if you don't collect evidence at the crime scene, it can be a charge against you as a police officer or an investigator. C, collecting evidence, including any corroborating evidence, like maybe a videotape or something like that. D, preserving the chain of possession of any collected evidence. E, utilizing trauma-informed practices to minimize the trauma experienced by victims and their families. Okay, guys, just give me 1 second here. I'm going to skip over to web resources, which is located in Appendix 28, and that's on page 245. And then I think I'm going to stop because this can get a little bit redundant, and it's kind of, it's somewhat dry material, but it's very important. Okay, this is going to take a minute to get to page 245. Hold on, guys. Well, you guys, I finally got there to Appendix 28, Web Resources. Me personally, my personal opinion, I don't trust all of these agencies. However, some of these websites you can get some good and interesting information. Just take things as, with a grain of salt. Because not all of these places are to be trusted when it comes to children. So the first one is Amber Alert Plan. The second one is Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Third one, Child Forensic, Interviewing Best Practices. Third one, Chadwick Center List of Resources. Fourth, Drug Endangered Children Training and Advocacy Center. The other one, End Violence Against Women International. Forensic Interviewing, a Primer for Child Welfare Professionals. Legal Updates Online. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I personally don't trust that place at all. National Center on Shaken Baby Syndrome. Recognizing when a child's injury or illness is caused by abuse. Vicarious Trauma Toolkit. Okay, I'm going to check the legal updates and see if it takes me there. No, it didn't. It didn't take me there, so I'm going to try to go to Google. Legal updates online. I don't know what this is, guys, but when I put in legal updates online, it took me to Thomson Reuters. A lot of these legal sites, you have to sign up for an account. Which is fine. They don't allow everyone to just get into them. No, that didn't go anywhere. So, of course, it took me out of it. Give me just a second, you guys. Like a goofball, I kicked myself out of it, so I have to try to go find it again. It doesn't just come up in my Kindle like it should. Weird. I am not the best computer savvy person. I can get by, but I wound up downloading it twice, so that's not good. Okay, I'm going to go back to the... Hold on, guys. I'm going to do some reading. I'll be right back. Okay, I did find something interesting. And it's located on page 35, Guideline 9, Marcy's Law in the Victim's Bill of Rights. Let's see how many people actually follow through with these things, right? This would be good for a lot of people to hold on to this if you're living in California, because sometimes police officers and detectives need to remember that there are rights for victims. Like all the second generation people standing out there that have been essayed as children, that have been physically abused as children, that have been exploited as children, that have been neglected as children. Just because the statute of limitations has run out does not mean what happened to them is no longer important, as well as there are still children in those buildings going through the same things. And us as citizens, as well as the police and the detectives, the FBI, all these people need to work together to help those children. In 1986, California law mandated certain statutory rights to victims and witnesses of crimes, 679.02 APC. This law, the California Victims' Bill of Rights, is now more commonly known as Marsy's Law. The state mandated that these rights be set forth in information and educational materials, 679.02B. This resulted in the creation of the Marsy's Card. California law requires all law enforcement officers to provide a Marsy's Card to all victims of their survivors, 679.026C1PC. Ideally, the first responding officer should have provided the card and information. So that means those cards need to be in those blue buildings right now for any of the children that were and are being victimized currently. That said, it is incumbent upon the investigating officer to ensure that the requirements have been met, specifically that the victim and or parents or guardians have received a Marsy's Card and that they understand their rights under the California Victims' Bill of Rights. Law enforcement officers should be familiar with all the information contained on the Marsy's Card. LAPD, you're going to need to carry those cards on you. You need to be familiar with it. It is strongly suggested that the investigating officer go through the contents of the Marsy's Card with the victim and or the victim's parents or guardians to ensure that they understand all of their rights under California law and to answer any questions that may have or be able to refer the victim and or the victim's parents or guardians to the appropriate resource. That gets really sticky and difficult when the parents and or the guardians are the ones doing the abusing or the enabling of the abuse. These rights contained in the California Bill of Rights, Marsy's Law, briefly include A. Fairness and respect. Oh, that's a good one, you guys. Fairness and respect, LAPD. How about that? To victims of crimes, victims of SA as children, victims of neglect as children, victims of physical abuse as children, victims of exploitation as children. Fairness and respect, LAPD. B as in Bravo, protection from the defendant. C, victim safety considerations in setting bail and release conditions. D, as in Delta, the prevention of the disclosure of confidential information. Oh, wait a minute, you guys. Wait. Please write this down, you guys. I want you guys to download this. That's exactly what Rinder did, right? Rinder's not a police officer. That's why, allegedly a police officer told him to take those things down from the internet, because that's D, the prevention of the disclosure of confidential information, of Miriam Francis's stuff. Now, granted, the statute of limitations, I think, did run out, but apparently confidentiality is a thing with child SA abuse survivors. Rinder, LAPD. E, refusal to be interviewed by the defense. F, conference with the prosecution and notice of pretrial disposition. G, notice and presence at public proceedings. H is in hotel, appearance at court proceedings and expression of views. Kind of like what the child advocates outside those blue buildings are doing, or in front of the Scientology Recruiting Center, which apparently there's a lot of recruiters that are Ring women, and a lot of security guards that are Ring women. Just LAPD, in case you didn't know that, now you know. It's a fact. I is in igloo. Speedy trial and prompt conclusion of the case. J, provision of information to the probation department. K is in kilo. Receipt of pre-sentence report. L, information about conviction, sentence, incarceration, release, and escape. Well, those children can't escape, can they? M is in motel, restitution. N is in Nancy, the prompt return of property when no longer needed as evidence. Oh, wait a minute. I know this is not regarding child abuse, but would that mean that DOA can get his computer back? It's not about child abuse, but I'm just saying, I guess he does have a right to have his computer back, doesn't he? O is an Oscar, to be informed of all parole procedures, to participate in the parole process, to provide information to the parole authority, to be considered before the parole of the offender, and to be notified upon request of the parole or other release to the offender. P, to have the safety of the victim, to have the safety of the victim, the victim's family, and the general public considered before any parole or other post-judgment release decision is made. So like I said, I did okay in high school as far as grades and that. College, I was all right, you know. I didn't do very well in algebra. I kind of sucked. I did have to have a little remedial help, you know, with certain subjects. Some I did really well in, some I was not the greatest in. But does that mean that adults who are children, who physically abuse children, who exploit children like they do in Scientology, who neglect children, does that mean that they are supposed to go to jail? Or there's a possibility that they can go to jail or prison? Damn! Looks like you guys are going to have to make some mass arrests over there. Q is in kilo, to be informed of the rights enumerated above. The provisions of the Sexual Assault Victims DNA Bill of Rights under Penal Code Section 680, 680.1, 680.2, 680.3, and 680.4 are applicable in cases of child sexual abuse when the conduct would include a violation of Penal Code Section 261, 261.5, 262, 286, 287, or 289 of former Section 288 alpha, in addition to giving the victim and or the parents or guardians the Marcy's card. It is recommended that the investigating officer also give the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights, the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, CAL-CASA, rights as a survivor of sexual assault or similar. See Appendix 25. Investigating officers should provide victims and their families with information pertaining to the benefits afforded crime victims by the state of California. The victims should be referred to the Victim Witness Assistance Center. So that means we need to get all these witnesses to the crimes in Scientology out and offer in California the potential for them to be referred to the Victim Witness Assistance Center. Give them some protection. See Chapter 21, Victim Witness Requirements, for further information. So that'll be the next video I do. I'm going to be doing a lot today. I've got somewhere to be here in about an hour. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this information. Please take notes and let's start holding people accountable. And we're going to do our best and our duty to try to help these children. And if there are other victims, adult victims, more so female victims in the Scientology buildings, we have to help them as well. Have a good day, everyone. I will put a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Have a great day.